candidates, Dan Sutton and Pat Haley, have joined us up here on stage. Dave Bernstein, you have the first question for Dan Sutton.
Dan, Douglas County has gone, I believe, 3 consecutive years without tapping surpluses to balance the budget, and also sets aside significantly more than is recommended for its rainy day fund, and in addition sets aside more monies into some more reserve accounts. Would you maintain that fiscal philosophy, or do you have other priorities you would like to support with at least some of that revenue?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you for having me here. I appreciate that. Being fiscally responsible by setting away funds is certainly a great idea, and it's something that we would maintain. But there are some programs that I'm interested in that I'd like to see a little more funding go to. Our Sheriff's Department, I think, can be more adequately funded for some of the needs in the rural portions of our county. I've been through literally every community in Douglas County, all 1,849 square miles. And we've got some issues in some of the smaller communities that we tend to overlook because East Wenatchee is typically the focus. There are some outlying drug issues in both Mansfield and Bridgeport, and I know the citizens there at least expressed to me that they'd like to see a little more visibility of the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, and I don't think that's their fault. I think they simply need some more funding, drug interdiction task force, for example, and we can improve that a little bit.
And Dave, your question for Pat Haley.
Pat, you worked with the Port District before, which was in the job creation business, so to speak, for Douglas County. You still get to play a role with that as a Douglas County Commissioner if elected. So what would your action plan be to try and bring more jobs to Douglas County?
You know, job creation isn't a magic button that you push, because I worked for 10 years trying to recruit companies to locate here. And a lot of it is the market and the company and the benefits that we had. I created a slogan to describe the value of this area. And I said that we were resource rich and people strong. And I identified those resources as power, fiber, and recreation. And then the people that live here, the education system, the visionary standard that people have. And I traveled with that message all over the country. And I made site visits to companies all over the country to try to recruit them to come here. We are a cul-de-sac location, which means in the area of manufacturing, raw material has to come in, a product's made, and has to go out to customers, often in distant markets. So that transportation cost is added to the factor of doing business here. And so what I would foresaw as the growth opportunity was in the area of technology and fiber optics. As soon as the PUDs received approval for legislation to put in fiber optic networks, we saw companies locate here where their location did not matter. And so they could ship their product on the fiber, and it didn't matter where they located. And as a result, we saw data centers and all sorts of technology just take off in this area. That's our future. And so in the area of infrastructure, in the area of opportunities that we can provide for expanding technology, I still leave that role to the ports. That's their job. They have the authority to use taxpayer resources for economic development. The county doesn't necessarily have that authority. And so with that authority, I'm going to give them the opportunity to advance their agenda, their purposes, what their mission is, and allow them to take the credit for the success that they're going to bring in new job opportunities.
Steve Hare, your first question for Pat Haley.
This will be a question for both of you. Lincoln County has recently changed the way collective bargaining agreements are negotiated. They now make that process open to the public. Would you support that as a way to make government more transparent?
Well, we have great laws in the state of Washington. I think we lead the country in the area of transparency. And I believe the public should know about the outcomes of events that happen. But I remind you that our Constitution was done in executive session. It was not open to the public. And it's important that you have negotiation that takes place so that information that is shared in between the two parties trying to make that negotiation process sense of confidentiality and know that this information isn't going to be used against them for some other negotiations or some other information. So I would refrain from having that being allowed, just like an executive session. You don't make decisions in executive session. What you're allowed to do is discuss it in confidential fashion so that you can lay things out on the table and not have to worry about the media coming in and having it all over the newspaper. And then you come out of executive session and you make the decision in the public sector. And that's the way I think that the labor negotiations should go. It should follow that executive session pattern and be allowed to have communication one-on-one between interested parties, come to agreement, come to a solution, come out of executive session, make a public decision.
And Dan Sutton.
Same question, Dan. Should union negotiations be a more transparent process?
Yes, absolutely. I think any negotiation, any hearing, any meeting should be open to the public. There shouldn't be anything to hide. And the public's input and the public's perception of negotiation can be very beneficial to achieving the proper result. I've seen it in local meetings where the public was involved and had their input, and it actually changed the course of the decision making because of that input. Executive session doesn't go away in this process. You still have the right for executive session, and executive session always remains private. That's the purpose of it. But transparency is important. I think that the people, especially of Douglas County, and we tend to be a pretty open group of people, want to know what's going on. I think it's beneficial to our county.
Cal Fitzsimmons, your first question is for Dan Sutton.
Yes, Mr. Sutton. Your opponent has described building North Central Washington as an organization that wants to take over the commission and, quote, have things done their way. You've been endorsed by them and by other building organizations, I've noticed. Should Douglas County residents be concerned that you will put the interest of developers ahead of the public at large?
You know, that's a super question, actually. And I've also been endorsed by the Washington State Farm Bureau, and they don't have an agenda either. You know, it might be interesting to know that I've been endorsed by those people because I went up and I was interviewed by them, just like my opponent was. We sat down and they asked questions and I answered questions. The truth of the matter is, as a commissioner, I don't have a scepter and a magic wand. I can't just go in willy-nilly and start changing laws and regulations to meet some special interest needs. What we do have in Douglas County, and it's existed for some length of time, is a what I perceive to be as an adversarial relationship between county governance and the people that cause growth, which are the builders and the developers. I've witnessed it personally. I've listened to comments by public officials that were not really savory towards that group of people. So there's animosity between both groups, and it goes both directions. My role isn't to go in and change regulations. My role is to sit down with the developers, the builders, the people who grow our county, and find a common ground and resolve any problems that might exist. You know, we cannot achieve optimum growth in our county until we resolve these problems. Imagine what we could do if we had our developers and our county government on the same team working towards the same goal. The citizens of Douglas County will benefit greatly.
And Pat Haley.
Mr. Haley, your comment about the building association and its influence on county government, that's not the first time someone has made that allegation about Douglas County. Do you have specific examples of them having too much influence on the county commissioners?
Well, the issue that came up had to do with a postcard that quoted me in a statement that was inaccurate. And so that mailed out to all of East Wenatchee, and so I had to deal with, you know, the pushback on how to resolve something that was misleading. And so in the area of building development, I have traveled around all over to East Wenatchee. I know that Dan has done the same thing. And there may be developers who have issues with certain things that are going on in the county. But I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are some developers who have figured it out, because there are tracts going up, houses by the hundreds, and it's just staggering to me in areas that I've never been in before. You know, I live on the north end of Cascade, and so I don't have a reason to be up by the airport as much. But there are hundreds of houses, and I went up to a builder and said, "Hey, are you having any problems with the Douglas County Planning Department?" He says, "No, we put this whole tract in, and we got it all worked out and figured it out." So to me that says that there's some people who loud voices. Now, I'm an engineer, and so I have an engineering degree, so when a contractor comes up to me and tries to tell me something that I know that is not correct, I can push back pretty readily because I know why we do certain things. It was my concern that somebody who doesn't have that background can easily be persuaded that they've got a case that may not be legitimately there. And I've found developers who are building projects just by the hundreds. And so when I hear this talk about problems going on, my plan, my desire is to create an ombudsman position similar that you would find at a university, where if you have an issue, you can go to this independent source, lay out your case, and have a means of solving the problem. There's two sides to each issue, and so the job would be to kind of mitigate what the problem is, if there is a problem, and find a solution that works.
Closing statements. First up is Dan Sutton.
You know, I want to thank everybody that's here tonight, everybody that's watching. This has been an incredible journey. I've had the opportunity to go through some of the communities that, frankly, I hadn't been in probably 20 years, and talk with the people of the county. It's amazing, and it's important for us to realize that Douglas County is not East Wenatchee. It doesn't run from Grand Road to Bastion Bridge. All of the rural communities matter as well. And the people in Waterville and Mansfield, Bridgeport, Orondo, Rock Island, Cooley Dam, Winthrop, all of them have their own special needs and concerns. And it's very important as a commissioner that we recognize that and we address them equally. They all pay taxes. So thank you all very much for having me, and it's been a great journey, and I'm glad it's close to being over.
Pat Haley, your closing statement.
You know, all of us will tell you stories about going campaigning. It's really been a remarkable experience. And some of the people that I've met, it's just been incredible. You know, all sorts of things can happen when you knock on a door and you're a stranger. And on one particular occasion, a lady who was working out in her yard, and I kind of disturbed her, and she was a little bothered anyway. And I said, "Ma'am, what's the matter?" And she had been working and disturbed this little rat's nest. And among the little critters that were on the ground there, they were all a little chirping, and she just could not go back to the garden. And I said, "Well, ma'am, maybe I could help you." And so I took my brochure, we scooped up that little guy, and I said, "Okay, we should say a prayer." And she says, "Oh, yes, please do." And I said, "Okay, well, Lord, this creature is yours, and we're going to send him back to Narnia, where all the animals talk." And you know, I thought, you know, that is what we do in serving the public, is that we find whatever need that we can do, however we need to fill it. So I just want to thank you for this community that has been so embracing. And the next time you offer me a beer, I'll take you up on it. Thank you.
Good stand.